Tired of ads barging into your favorite news podcasts? Good news. Ad-free listening on Amazon Music is included with your Prime membership. Just head to amazon.com/ad-free news podcasts to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads. Enjoy thousands of Acast shows ad-free for Prime subscribers. Some shows may have ads.
Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our quick publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms, and we have our own apps for Apple and Android. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and welcome to a special edition of Stat Me Up for Anfield Index. So, ladies and gents, this is the first of a two-parter. The transfer window is open, speculation is fervent, and to be honest, the Reds don't look like they're doing too much, do they, in all honesty? There's loans going in and out everywhere, but in terms of permanent transfers, it is all quiet on the Western Front. So, in the first of our two-part special, we'll be looking at transfers and specific positions we believe the Reds may be looking to reinforce in. If not now, then the summertime for definite. So I'm delighted as always to be joined by the stat man himself, the renowned and the respected Ben Bocksak. Ben, how are we?
Yeah, I'm good. I apologize in advance for my voice. It's not up to scratch at the moment, 100%. Unfortunately, we had a bit of a case of COVID, I think, in over the last sort of week or so, and I fell victim to that, but I'm feeling a lot better now, and the weekend result helped as well. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this episode. I think it's a good one. I've been preparing all week and just looking at the potential players, and I'm excited to talk about them now finally.
Yeah, I think we could pretend our listeners and subscribers were interested in your welfare, Ben, but they're after the stats, they're after the targets and the analysis, aren't they? So, ladies and gents, we said it is the first in a two-part series, so we'll concentrate on sort of areas of the team specifically. So for this one, this week, there's going to be a real defensive feel. And I think we've talked about this, Ben. It makes sense that defence is likely, you never know, but likely to be the priority, especially with the players that we have. Joel Matip expected to leave. There's no sign, with his injury, especially that he's going to be renewing. So a one short. And listen, we all see the social media comments and columns, whatever it may be. There's a lot of shout, shall we say, for Jurgen to go now, isn't there? But it doesn't seem likely. So let's talk ahead. I mean, Ben, we'll go sort of the key positions because, as you know, the speculation's fervent and people have got their preferences. They'll know some of these players and think, yeah, that's the one I want type of thing. So if we start at centre-back, now, you're going to have seen this as much as me. There's three names recently that, again, and for people jump up and shout clickbait, whatever, that do just keep coming up in reports. And I'm almost going to split these because if we talk about one that's recurring, we'd have to talk about Inacio at Sporting Lisbon. If we talk about one, to be fair, you flagged to me early doors in terms of a player of real potential that now the world seems to have woken up to and every team's being linked with, in Yoro at Lille. And then if we have one that's almost new on the block, so to speak, but again, reports just sort of coming up, sort of gathering a bit of pace, also at Sporting, Diomande. So there's a fair few centre-halves to profile there. So we kind of start in that order, Ben, because Inacio's one that stands out for me in the sense of it's a name that won't go away. It just keeps coming up time and time again, this Portuguese defender. Stats-wise, does that name reoccur in backup? Should we have him in our radar, or do you think it is column inches? How do the stats profile with him?
Yeah, I mean, obviously he's a left-sided centre-back mostly. So if we're profiling him up against Virgil van Dijk, which is, I feel unfair when we're profiling any centre back up against Virgil van Dijk just because of his quality. I think stats doesn't necessarily reflect a reason why Liverpool would be interested. And the big thing that I flagged up, the big question mark about Inacio is his aerial duels. He wins just 44% of them.
Wow.
In Portuguese top flight. Which is really low. I think looking at the worst Liverpool centre back for that metric, they're getting up to 65%.
Yeah,
I think that's Jarrell Kwanzaa, and he's around the 60% mark. So 44% is really quite low. But I think all the other things about Inacio I like. I like the fact that he can play as a left back. He can cover that sort of left area really well. He's really good on the ball. All those metrics, he stands out in the Portuguese league as one of the best in terms of his ball playing abilities, progressive passes and stuff like that. For me, the question mark is just over the aerials, over his height. He's not the tallest. I think he's only 1.8 meters, so around 6 foot. That's fairly short for a centre-back in the Premier League. And I think when you're coming up against, tall, physical players week in, week out in the Premier League, that's something that's a bit of a concern for me.
Yeah, it doesn't really follow that a Liverpool centre-back has a 44% aerial success, because we know the type we operate at the back with, that Virgil and Ibu, they're just giant behemoths to start with anyway, aren't they? They're so physical. Even Joel Matip, slightly different style, but just because of his pure height as well, always been good in the air. Even, I know you flagged this before, Joe Gomez has done really well there as well in that sense. So that height, 44%, and I think you've made a fair point there as well. It's not that anyone looks at the Portuguese league and looks at it as a physical league by any means as well. So there's a few red flags, I think it's fair to say there. But as you also mentioned, the ability to play in two positions keeps him sort of in the mix. It's understandable, and his ability on the ball. The one that you flagged a while ago, now I've almost seen a lot of people say now, Yoro's the one for me. And it just seems to have almost come from nowhere. And I'm going to be honest, my sort of knowledge on him is solely from you and then looking into it a bit more. I mean, it's been a while, though, since we last talked about him. Are Yoro stats still headline grabbing? Is this still a one to keep an eye on, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of him. I think probably all the top teams in Europe are, let's be honest. Like, his stats are incredible. In the top 5 European leagues this season, he's won the most he has the best defensive duel percentage.
Wow.
The best aerial duel percentage as well among centre-backs. So top two, probably the top two key metrics for a centre-back.
Yeah.
And he's top in both of those, which is incredible. And then if we're looking at League One specifically, he's also got the best pass completion rate.
Wow.
So, in a lot of it, he ticks a lot of boxes. I think for me, the question marks of this one, he's so...
Tired of ads crashing your comedy podcast party? Good news. Ad-free listening on Amazon Music is included with your Prime membership. Just head to amazon.com/ad-free comedy to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads. Enjoy thousands of Acast shows ad-free for Prime subscribers. Some shows may have ads.
Good already, and he's so established already. Half of Europe wants him. Are Liverpool going to be willing to pay, 90 million, 70 to 90 million that's being talked about for him in this market for an 18-year-old who's only playing his first full season of professional football? And on top of that, I think I mentioned that his pass completion rate is really high, is really good. But I do think at times, at the moment, he's a bit too safe on the ball. I kind of want him to be more involved in the progressive passing side of things. That area of his game is not quite there yet. Even though Lille, if we're looking at the French league, they have, I think, the second best possession in the French league behind PSG. So his side has a lot of possession, but I think he's not quite using the ball as effectively going forward as you'd expect a Liverpool centre-back to be doing, for example, like when you're comparing him to the likes of Van Dijk, Matip and Gomez, although comparing to Gomez this season is a bit unfair because Gomez has done a lot of his minutes in left and right back. But yeah, I think that's one area that I wrote an article in Anfield Index about him, and it kind of it's flagged up to me because I think it's something that he could work on.
It's crazy, isn't it? I mean, that those metrics and almost dominating those stats at such a young age, which also means that, as kind of you alluded to there, we might, or Liverpool fans, it might be a new name for them, but it's definitely not going to be a new name for Europe's big boys. And that also means, unfortunately...
Are you that person who has everything? The coolest merch and those must-have fan threads? Well, over at our Anfield Index shop, we've gone that extra mile when it comes to pimping up your Liverpool collection. From our popular range of bespoke design t-shirts, sweaters, hoodies and hats, to our signature edition mugs, prints and coasters, all provided with fast worldwide shipping. We have something for every red. We also stock official LFC merchandise and are licensed with the Premier League and UEFA to sell official iron-on shirt badges and sleeve patches. As a listener to this podcast, you can get 10% off everything with coupon code AIPRO10. Just head over to AnfieldIndex.shop or find us on Etsy by searching for Anfield Index.
The transfer fee, as you said, is going to head northward of where Liverpool like to go, shall we say, and other big players are going to come into the mix in that regard. And it's also, like you said, Liverpool have a sweet spot in terms of amount. They also have a sweet spot in terms of sample size, don't they? They usually like it's 100 to 200 appearances before they make the move across the top league. This is his first season, and yes, he is smashing it by all accounts. There's no two ways about it. But with the fee and the risk, yeah, it might be a wishful thinking one, possibly. But we'll see. We'll see, obviously, how that develops in the summer. And then the other name that it's come up recently from nowhere all of a sudden, but it keeps being repeated by a lot of people. Diomande, Inacio's colleague at Sporting Lisbon. I'll be honest, I've never seen the player, know nothing about him, not even going to pretend. But what do we know from a stats perspective about Diomande?
Well, I think what we know reportedly is that Liverpool have been watching a lot of Sporting games this season, Liverpool scouts. And for me, if I'm looking at his statistics, Diomande feels like a typical Liverpool signing almost. He's kind of just this under-the-radar gem that's not being talked about as much as maybe the other players, but he's equally as impressive. I mean, I was just looking at his metrics. He's got the third best defensive duel success rate in the league, 75%. Wow. That's really high. The fourth best when it comes to aerial duels as well, 62.5%. Not the highest when we're looking at Liverpool players, but in the league, he's fourth best among centre-backs, so it's still really high.
Yeah.
And, what stands out to me is that he's also quite effective on the ball, which maybe Yoro doesn't quite have in his game. So he averages the second most dribbles per 90. He's really good at sort of bringing the ball forward, very composed on the ball. And on top of that, he also has the best pass completion rate for centre-backs who average 50 passes per 90. So, he's got that composure about him. He's comfortable on the ball. Wins a decent amount of aerial duels. He's good defensively as well. It just seems like he ticks more boxes for Liverpool at the moment than even Yoro. I think he's more of a complete player, which you expect him to be, because he is 2 years older. But for me, I'm a big fan of him. I really like him, and I think he could be, that sort of under the radar gem, the sort of Konate signing, the sort of Sobosay signing, who the rest of Europe isn't really looking at, but it turns out to be a really good pickup for Liverpool.
Do you think then, I mean, based on that, because Yoro's the headline grabber at the moment, so to speak, and a lot of Europe will be well versed in Inacio's talents and what he brings. Do you think, based on that, Diomande's a more, and maybe this is the way I'm phrasing it, but a more Liverpool type signing because that gem under the radar, probably think they can get him at a decent-ish fee, so to speak. Do you think out of the three, if I make you put your neck on the line, does he seem a bit more likely, shall we say?
Yeah, I mean, if I could compare it to last summer, Yoro feels like the Bellingham signing,
Right.
and Diomande maybe might be the more of the Soboslai or McAllister sort of
Mm.
signing. Yeah, I think just because the data is really good for him, and he's still young, and I know he has a 70 million release clause, but Sporting I think might be willing to do business for less. So yeah, I think all of those things point towards, if we're talking about these three players, Diomande being the likeliest at this stage to come into Liverpool.
Interesting. And I should say, those are the three that we're hearing, or there's a lot of reports around. Is there any other sort of centre-backs that when you're looking at the stats, that even if we're not sort of hearing their name linked with Liverpool, you're thinking they do fit in Liverpool's profile in terms of what they bring, the style, the stats-wise, that you wouldn't be surprised if they were at least on the list, shall we say?
Well, he's actually someone who has been linked, Ko Itakura. I wanted to sort of flag him up because it's coming from a fairly reliable source in Fabrizio Romano, who said Liverpool scouts have been watching him. And I like his stats. I think he's, again, really composed on the ball. His pass completion rate is really good. He makes a lot of forward passes, progressive passes in the Bundesliga. And on top of that, he's someone who can play left and right-sided centre-back, which I think Liverpool need.
Yeah.
He's got a goal threat about him as well. And I think he scored 2 goals in 7 games in the Bundesliga so far this season. So he's got, kind of ticks a lot of boxes, but he also comes with a lot of question marks as well. If we're talking about Inacio's aerial duels, Itakura's is around the 50% mark. So
Right.
again, he's a bit of a enigma, I think, for me, because he scores goals from set pieces, but his aerial duel percentage defensively is not.
Hello, I'm here to annoy you. I'm here to annoy you into listening to more of me and more of others on EPL Index. We don't just have the Anfield Index stuff. We've got EPL Index as well, which covers the entirety of the Premier League. And we have 3 podcasts and a whole bunch of really good writing on EPLindex.com. The podcasts are my own Two-Footed podcast, which is every day at 4 p.m, Monday through Friday, covering the whole league. We have A Tad Predictable, hosted by Tadiwa. You know Tadiwa, he does Anfield Index. He presents A Tad Predictable before every Premier League match week. And then Kevin De Vries and his crew on the EPL Roundtable, they're every week after the Premier League match week. So make sure you listen to everything we're doing on EPL Index and follow us there on Twitter at EPL Index. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Not as high as you would want it to be. And on top of that, the injury problems as well is a bit of a concern, because he's missed I think he hasn't played since October or November now.
Right.
He's missed quite a chunk of the season. He's a bit of a doubt for the Asian Cup if he's going to be 100% fit for that for Japan. And he's had a few injuries in the past as well. So I think he's the one that I kind of wanted to flag up, because Fabrizio Romano has hinted at Liverpool being interested in him, has said that we've watched him, and stats-wise he is interesting, but I think he comes with more question marks rather than answers for Liverpool. And I think it depends. He could be the sort of, if I can compare it to last summer again, he might be the sort of Gravenberch signing where there's some sort of raw potential in him, and he's useful because he can play in multiple positions. And Fabrizio Romano sort of said that there might be a release clause for him that's activated in the summer, and if that release clause is something that we think is a decent price, then we might go for it, just because he's got that utility player aspect to him.
Yeah, it will be interesting. I think one thing's for certain, Liverpool are going to get a player in the summer who can play centre half. I mean, again, gut-wise, because we talked about a few of those players, some can play left back, different things. Do you think, is that a fair point that a lot of fans are saying that? Do you think it will be a sort of an outright centre-back specialist, or are you more expecting Liverpool to go down a route of a player that can play, like you said, a few positions, even if it is left-sided and right-sided centre-back that way?
I think it's going to be an out and out centre back. Primarily, I think that's going to be Liverpool's first option. But I wouldn't be surprised if Liverpool go for that sort of utility player as well, just because I don't think Matip will get his contract extended, and even if he does,
Yeah.
I don't think Liverpool will be looking at him as a long term option. So I think there will be a direct replacement for him, and then potentially Liverpool, if there's money left, they could look at a more sort of utility player who can cover a few multiple positions.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see. And I mean, another spot we've got to talk about now, and especially, well, unfortunately, with Trent's injury that's announced today, his knee's out for 3 weeks. And yes, Gomez can cover Connor Bradley. We're hoping he does well in this interim period. But a lot of people have talked about a right back, haven't they, Ben? Naturally, with the option of even Trent, especially wanting to play further forward, being moved into midfield. I mean, that's been almost the hot topic all season, isn't it? Trent right back, inverted, all those types of things. But the only real name you see, and I wouldn't say it's a hot link by any means, but I've seen it a few times, and a few sort of subscribers have pointed this out. Jermaine Frimpong at Leverkusen, he's a name that keeps coming up. Now, again, I won't pretend I'm an avid watcher, but a lot of clubs seem interested in this player at the same time. I mean, Frimpong, right back, does he profile as he can never be Trent, don't get me wrong, but does he profile as a Liverpool player, would you say?
I mean, if we're comparing him to Trent, in terms of profile, I think he's very different. He's more of a direct, sort of old-fashioned, traditional fullback.
Right.
He's someone who likes to sort of bomb down the wing almost. He averages around 2 or 3 dribbles more per 90 than Trent.
Wow.
So that's quite a lot. And I think just he also loves to just cross the ball in and more sort of directly influence the play rather than the way Trent plays, where he cuts into the middle, or even before he started inverting, he was creating a lot of chances with his distribution and his passing. Frimpong is more of a get the ball and run type of player, whereas Trent was
right.
Get the ball and look for a pass or look for something for an opening, whereas Frimpong is bomb down the wing, cut in or cross the ball in. So basically score or assist. And because of that, his numbers are quite high. I mean, in this Leverkusen system, he's almost playing like a winger rather than as a fullback. And that's why his numbers are even higher than they were before under Xabi Alonso. And I think, I think if it were to come in, Liverpool would have to tweak or adjust the system again.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be there would have to be some sort of configuration, because I don't know how well he could complement Salah and Szoboszlai being on that side. And on top of that, you want Trent Alexander-Arnold probably playing on the right side in midfield as well. So how do you fit all of those players? It almost seems gluttonous to have that much talent on that right side,
Yeah, it doesn't quite seem to fit, especially when we've seen Joe Gomez go there and it's looked balanced particularly. I suppose the only other thing on right backs, are there any other right backs you think may well be on Liverpool's radar, even if they're not being talked about that much at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of did my own research. One that I really like is Amar Dedic at Red Bull Salzburg. He's their captain at only 21 years old. He's got 9 goal contributions. And the reason that I like him the most is because he can actually play right and left back. And he's been doing that this season several times. So he can flip between the two sides, which I think would be really useful for Liverpool.
Yeah.
The Red Bull link there as well. So I think he might be someone to watch, and it's just impressive the fact that he's been captaining them in the Champions League at such a young age. I mean, Red Bull is a young team, but still they've got some more experienced players who could have been given the armband. So I think he's one to watch. And then kind of, when you're looking at the profile of Trent, I kind of did a sort of Y Scout search, looking at fullbacks with a high number of progressive passes, a high number of chances created, expected assists, and that kind of thing. And Y Scout, this one player that I kind of flagged up on my research was another Salzburg player who's playing for Liefering and their under-19 youth team called Mark Georgian. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but yeah, he's someone who's quite interesting because he's averaging a high volume of progressive passes, similar number of crosses per 90 as Trent. He's got a bit more, he's got a similar sort of creative threat as Trent as well. And obviously it's a smaller sample size compared to Trent because there's only data from the Austria second division and the UEFA Youth League.
I don't need a VPN. I've got nothing to hide. This is what I used to tell myself before I hooked up with LibertyShield.com. Not only is my home internet now fully encrypted, but I can now access all the websites I want, whenever I want, and do so from absolutely anywhere. As a Liverpool fan, I love to know I can now watch every match, regardless of whether it's on UK TV or not. My Liberty Shield VPN makes sure nothing is blocked and guarantees me super fast streaming speed throughout that match. You can get connected right now with their software package, which includes a 48-hour no-obligation free trial and instant access to their apps for Apple, Android, Fire TV, PC, Mac, and Android TV. Or go a step further like I have and get one of their pre-configured VPN routers. These small but powerful devices allow you to easily connect every device in your home to VPN, making it the perfect solution for smart TVs, Mag boxes, and games consoles. Visit LibertyShield.com today and use coupon code AIVPN25 to get 25% off at checkout.
But he's someone interesting, and I don't want to toot my own horn here, but the last time I did this stylistic sort of search for a Trent successor, the person that I flagged up was a certain right back playing for Aberdeen at the time, who was pretty much looked like Trent Alexander-Arnold, just playing in Scotland, and that was obviously Calvin Ramsey, who ended up signing for Liverpool, I think 6 to 9 months later when I first wrote that article for Liverpool.com back in the day. So, he might be one to watch.
Interesting. Yeah, Jurgen Klopp loves a player that can play right back and left back as well, so that would be valuable. Yeah, maybe we might be tuning into a few more Salzburg games in the near future, and probably this one. Now, this is the one that I think people would say least likely, but you never know with Robbo getting older, Tsimikas, the injuries, that type of thing. But there's no real quotable, I'd say, left backs. We've talked about players that can play left back and centre back as a dual, but any sort of left backs you think could be on Liverpool's radar based on what sort of Robertson, Tsimikas provide at the moment?
Well, I think Anthony Robinson has been sort of linked, but I think I've sort of shut down those links. That might have been just agent talk. I think he's someone who's decent. I think right this season he's averaging, he has the most interceptions in the Premier League out of any player. So that's quite impressive. I think he's decent going forward as well. But the sort of £35 million, is that something Liverpool are going to pay when, they paid that for Gravenberch and McAllister, and McAllister was won a World Cup, whereas Robinson has just been decent in a decent in the Premier League. So I don't know if Liverpool would be willing to pay that kind of fee. Another one, I mean, this might be just wishful thinking, but Alphonso Davies is entering the last 18 months of his contract at Bayern Munich. His contract expires in 2025. I think there's been a few murmurs that he might be looking for a new challenge. I mean, Liverpool have done quite a bit of business with Bayern Munich recently as well, with Thiago and Sadio Mane. So there is precedence for it. I'm just going to, sort of leave that out there, but I think that is probably wishful thinking. I don't think that will happen, but it is interesting.
Yeah, I think everyone's got the feeling that's renewal or Real Madrid, one of the two beckoning. But we'll have to say, I mean, the defensive options, one thing we all know, Liverpool are going to strengthen the defence in the summer. They're going to have to, aren't they, realistically, because of what's happening. So it will be one to see. And whilst we're talking about defensive options, it makes sense to talk about probably the position, I think, if we're honest, Ben, most people want strengthened the most. Most people think if we got a top class number 6, and when we say that, a specialist as well. So we are going to talk about sort of specialists who can play that number 6 role. Now, there's players linked to, before anyone jumps on this, we're not talking Doucouré because Doucouré's got a long-term injury now as well, hasn't he? Before people jump on that. Obviously, we had the complications trying to negotiate with Palace in the summer. So we're not going to talk Czech Doucouré. But the 2 names that have come out in recent times or are being repeated, I think it's fair to say, is Kamara at Aston Villa. They're number 6. And I could be pronouncing this wrong. The Dutch player, I think it's Mats Weifer, is pronounced as well. Those are the 2 sort of names that keep coming up. What can you tell us about those 2, Ben? Do they match up stylistically, do you think, stats-wise, to what we might be looking for in a number 6?
Well, I think Kamara, for me, doesn't necessarily. I think if we're just basing it on what Fabinho was doing for Liverpool, I think for me, he doesn't necessarily fit that profile, or even just comparing him to Wataru Endo this season, it doesn't quite match. But Mats Weifer, on the other hand, if we're looking at what we really want from a holding midfielder, which is with a high amount of defensive duels, so at least over 60%, cover a lot of ground and be able to read the play and intercept passes and anticipate moments where you can break up the opposition's counter-attacks. Weifer kind of ticks all of those boxes. So he's won 65% of his defensive duels in the Eredivisie, which is decent.
Yeah.
On top of that, last season he averaged the most possession-adjusted interceptions in the league. Again, he's up there sort of over around 8 or 9 possession-adjusted interceptions, so that's really high again. And he does cover a lot of ground as well. If you look at his heat map, it's red everywhere, which is what you want to see from a holding midfielder. He kind of ticks all of those boxes. He's relatively young as well. He's tall. He's got that sort of Fabinho look about him in the way he moves around on the pitch. I quite like him. I mean, obviously, we brought in Cody Gakpo, and I think he's settled pretty decent from coming in from the Eredivisie. Obviously, there's he had the unfair expectations of being compared to Roberto Firmino, but I think overall he's done well so far in his Liverpool career, and I think that might help us in terms of being more open to doing business from that division. There's the Pep Linders connection. I mean, he would probably love as many Dutch players as possible at the club, so he wouldn't complain. And I think I quite like Weifer, and I think if Liverpool are going to be looking at that market, he's the one who sort of stands out at the moment as a sort of typical Liverpool signing, because he's not as highly valued. Not that many clubs are in for him. He's not the highest rated of players, but he's sort of going under the radar, and he's got could be a bit of a rough diamond, really. But I do want to highlight, like, Wataru Endo is doing a good job. And on top of that, we've got Stefan Bajcetic coming through, and I think Liverpool are obviously being very careful with his situation, his injury, sort of his growing problems. But if Liverpool can get him back, to the level that he was at last season, then I would sort of wager that we don't even need a holding midfielder, because we've got Endo for the present, who's 30 and he's got that experience, and you've got Bajcetic for the future, who's was really impressive last season, and I think he's got a lot of potential about him. And if he can get to the form that he was in last season, maybe he won't get that this season, but next season, I think Liverpool don't want to be taking up his potential playing time, and you'd rather build on him, sort of almost like Liverpool built on João Kwanzaa this season, rather than spend, 30-40 million on Weifer. I think it just makes sense, because I think I really like Bajcetic, and I think he's got a lot of potential and a bright future ahead of him. I think for me, maybe this holding midfield position is not, because of how Endo has played recently, is not sort of set in stone for Liverpool anymore.
Interesting, which I know there'll be some people screaming and disagreeing with you wildly, which probably then leads to the final question, because you've kind of, for you, thinking not number 6. So I suppose it comes down to, if we focus on defensive ones for part one, centre-back, right-back, left-back, which of those positions do you expect, or if you had to bet, think Liverpool will strengthen this summer?
Well, I want to clarify, everything depends on Bajsetic's recovery, because if he's still struggling towards the end of the season, then I think that changes the picture, and that's when we might see someone like Weifer come in. So I'm not ruling out a holding midfielder just yet, but I think the first priority is a centre back, and I think I'm expecting Matip to leave. I kind of want him to leave. I know that seems sort of harsh because he's injured and might be a bit cruel, but I think it's time for him to go. He's been brilliant this season when he was fit, but unfortunately the injury problems. And Liverpool, this is Liverpool 2.0 now. We need to look at the future and not look back to the past. So for me, a Matip replacement, it should be the priority. Ideally, someone who could also play left-sided centre-back. But I think overall, because Kwanzaa has done it so well this season, that might not be as much of a priority anymore. And then after that, I think potentially, if we're not going for a holding midfielder, potentially a right back, just out of these defensive options, because I think there might be some other priorities elsewhere, which we'll cover in part 2. But potentially a right back, because for now, I think unless Kostas Tsimikas starts to get an itch for wanting to leave in the summer, I don't think left back is a priority. And I don't see, like we mentioned, there's not a really exciting left back who Liverpool should go for, or a sort of under the radar gem who's doing really well in Europe who Liverpool could target. So I think right now we're happy as it is with Tsimikas, who is really good, and Robertson. When he's fit, he's still one of the best left backs in the world.
Nice. Yeah, and ladies and gents, just for everyone's thinking, where's all the talk about other players? As we said, it is a 2-part special that we're doing, so we will look at everything advanced, shall we say, of the number 6. But this week, the focus was on, as we say, the defensive position, so anywhere across the back line, and that's specialist number 6. You may agree, you may well disagree with me and Ben, but hopefully that has provided you, as normal, as we try on Stat Me Up, the insight into certain transfer targets and who might be on the radar. So all that leaves me to do, as normal, is say, Ben, thanks very much for the stats, the time and the insight. Much appreciated.
Yeah, pleasure as always. I really enjoyed it.
Good stuff. And next time for part 2, tune in to Anfield Index as normal.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at anfieldindex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Tired of ads barging into your favorite news podcasts? Good news. Ad-free listening on Amazon Music is included with your Prime membership. Just head to amazon.com/ad-free news podcasts to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads. Enjoy thousands of Acast shows ad-free for Prime subscribers. Some shows may have ads.